It's getting close to 7 o'clock, so I'd like everyone to be seated. As a hobby, I collect and restore antique clocks. I have 1,300 in my house, so I like to be on time at least once a day. We're going to start promptly, so please take your seats. Okay. Hi, how are you? Okay. We're just waiting for the ROTC students to bring the flag in, and we'll start momentarily. So while we're waiting, I'm supposed to tell a joke to keep the audience amused. I'm a CPA. I practiced in Gloucester for 44 and a half years. I live over the bridge in Swampscott, and I didn't tell clients where I lived. So after 10 or 12 years, I finally mentioned to one of the clients where I lived, "You live in Swampscott? That's over the bridge. Gee, Howard, you seem so normal." So that's why they selected me, a normal person, to be the moderator of today's program. So, Okay. Well, before they come in. Fine. Sure. Welcome to today's forum, sponsored by the Cape Ann Political Action Committee, a nonpartisan organization here in Cape Ann. My name is Howard Frisch. I will be the moderator of today's program. Since I live over the bridge, I cannot vote in the election in this district. With us are 4 candidates who are running for state representative for the Essex 5th District to take the place of the late Anne Margaret Ferrante. The district includes Gloucester, Rockport, Manchester, and Essex. Anne Margaret had represented the district since 2008. She passed away on November 27th, 2025, at the early age of 53. Anne Margaret was a champion for the people of Cape Ann, always advocating for her constituents, including the fishing industry, small businesses, and the cultural identity of Cape Ann. She will be missed by all of us. Before we begin, I'd like you to stand and join me in the flag salute, which is to my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Gloucester High School students working on the forum include the following. Please stand when I call your name and hold the applause till the end. Henry Harrison, Amos Telep, Jude Worthley, and our timekeeper, Seamus Linehan. The participating candidates are in alphabetical order, and again, please hold your applause until I've read all of the names. In alphabetical order, Christina Delisio, Manchester, Republican. Gil Frieden, Essex, unenrolled. Drew Tarr from Gloucester, Democrat. Sarah Wilkinson, Rockport, Democrat. Thank you. Today's program is a forum. It is not a debate. We will hear an exchange of ideas from the candidates. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their introductory remarks. Then there will be questions that were formulated with input from the Cape Ann Political Action Committee, Gloucester High School students, and the public. The questions were sent to the candidates in advance, and the speaking order will rotate, and I'll handle that. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question, and may also have a 30-second comment time afterwards. Now for the opening remarks, let me remind you that each candidate will have 60 seconds to introduce themselves. Starting again in alphabetical order, Christine Delisio. Christina.
But no, it's confusing.
Okay.
Don't hold me yet. But honestly, there was a little mix-up with my birth certificate, so some people call me Christine, but I did have to get the real ID, and they found the mistake 50 years later, so I say I was Christine for the first 50 and Christina for the second. So anything is correct, but it is legally Christina. All right, thank you, Howard, very much, and thank you, Cape Ann PAC, for having us here tonight. As Howard said, my name is Christina Delisio, and I'm running for state representative because writing laws is serious work. It requires preparation, independence, and accessibility. Beacon Hill is changing. Power is shifting away from voters toward mandates, agencies, and centralized decision-making, and that deserves real scrutiny. I'm an attorney licensed since 2003 and a former elected official in Manchester. I've written law, analyzed budgets, and challenged government overreach. I approach every issue the same way, whether it's housing, healthcare, energy, or education. Every policy I support must meet 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control.
Thank you. Gil Frieden.
I'm Gil Frieden. I live in Essex, and like Representative Ferrante, I live with my mom. She's over here with pink hair. Thank you, Howard and Jude and your friends for helping out with this evening, and Cape Ann Political Action Committee for making it all happen. So I've had really 2 careers in my life, lots of little micro careers since I've moved to Cape Ann, and I've worked on Meals on Wheels and helping seniors getting their bills paid, and I've taught strength classes and balance classes, and I've even rented kayaks on Tuna Wharf and Rockport. But a really fun job is telling all those classic stories for people in line at Woodman's all summer long. But my earlier career, that was in finance and wealth management. I spent years reading complicated documents and asking tough questions and helping families plan for the future inside a system that is not designed to be simple or fair. So now I'm ready for my 3rd career, serving as your state representative. So join me at votegil.org.
Thank you, Gil. Drew Tarr.
Thank you for the Cape Ann PAC. Thank you to the Gloucester Times who are here. Thank you to 1623. I'm Andrew Tarr. I go by Drew. I'm a lifelong Gloucester resident. I grew up in a multi-generational household here in Gloucester. I also live with my mother as part of that multi-generational household. For the last 9 years, I've worked for Representative Ann Margaret Ferrante. We were very close, and I had the great fortune of her being my tutor in politics, in government, and I want to bring that experience to bear for the people of Cape Ann, because there's a lot that goes on in Beacon Hill. We need experience right now. We're going into the budget season as we speak for the House of Representatives and the Senate, and if we don't have someone in there who knows how to tend to that budget debate, who to advocate, how to write budget amendments, we're going to lose a lot out on Cape Ann. So thank you all for being here tonight, and I look forward to the forum.
Thank you, Drew. Sarah?
Great. Thank you. Thank you to the Cape Ann PAC, the volunteers and students who are making tonight possible, and my fellow candidates. I'm Sarah Wilkinson, a mom of 2 kids in our public schools, a small business owner, and a longtime community leader. I earned my Bachelor of Science from UMass Amherst and my MBA in Finance from Suffolk University. I'm not a political insider. I'm a local leader who served Rockport for 18 years as a select woman, including 5 years as chairwoman. I'm not beholden to anyone politically, only to you, the residents of Cape Ann. I help guide our town through challenging budgets, major infrastructure projects, and the pandemic. In local government, you don't deal in theory, you solve real problems and stay accountable. I was elected 6 times. Cape Ann deserves practical leadership, independent judgment, and someone who listens and delivers results. Together, we can protect what makes Cape Ann special while building a strong, sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for your introductory comments. Now to the questions. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds to answer each question, plus a 30-second follow-up. As a moderator, I have the sole discretion to allow additional elaboration as appropriate. Question number 1 is immigration. It'll be presented by Gloucester High School student Amos Telep. Amos?
Massachusetts has seen significant growth in its immigrant population in recent years. What actions should the state and local communities take to balance immigration while meeting the needs of the existing community?
Now for the response, starting with Christine.
All right. Thank you. I believe Massachusetts can be welcoming and responsible at the same time. Those values are not in conflict. I evaluate every policy using 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control. Affordability means demand-driven programs cannot grow without guardrails. The Emergency Assistance Program is approaching $1 billion annually. Costs exceed projections instead of meaningful reform. Beacon Hill has relied on the rainy day fund to cover reoccurring expenses. That reflects a lack of fiscal discipline. To put that in perspective, $1 billion divided by 351 communities is nearly $3 million per city or town. That's real money that could support schools, infrastructure, and local services. Accountability means taxpayers deserve transparent reporting and clear eligibility standards. If the public funds a program, the public has the right to know how it operates. Local control means communities deserve clarity about how these policies are implemented. Without clear eligibility, verification, transparency, right to shelter policies can operate in ways that resemble sanctuary-style outcomes. And voters deserve an open, honest debate about that. I support clear residency verification and fiscal caps so reoccurring spending is not supported by our rainy day fund. We are a nation of immigrants and a nation of laws. Compassion and sustainability must go hand in hand.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. Massachusetts and Cape Ann have always been shaped by immigrants. Almost all of us here this evening are immigrants ourselves or just a few generations removed. I'm the great-granddaughter of immigrants from southern Italy, Sicily, England, and Poland. Admittedly, I make a great sauce, but speak horrible Italian. Communities like ours were built by families seeking opportunity. As a legislator, my responsibility is to meet the needs of all residents, those who have been here for generations and those who are newly arriving. That means balancing compassion with planning. The state must work closely with municipalities so local communities are not overwhelmed. We need transparent communication and proper funding for housing as well as education. We also need to focus on workforce and educational integration, English language instruction, job training, and helping people enter the workforce quickly so they can support their families and contribute to our economy. This, to me, is about thoughtful planning, fairness to taxpayers, and keeping Cape Ann a sustainable, welcoming community for everyone who calls it home.
Thank you, Sarah. Drew?
So I believe that balancing immigration locally, which of course we don't have any control over who comes to the state, who comes to the community, It means investing in integration, so our residents who are long-term and new immigrants can understand and succeed together. We have a responsibility to make sure that people here integrate successfully and that communities have the resources that they need. I don't think it has to be either or, current community or new community, because in many ways, the immigrant populations are supporting our current community. There are healthcare workers, there are janitors, there are cashiers, there are fishermen. And where would we be as a community if we didn't integrate our new communities? We wouldn't have Fiesta, we wouldn't have the Crowning, we wouldn't have Our Ladies, we wouldn't have St. Anne's, all built by immigrants. And if those folks weren't allowed to integrate easily, and it may have strengthened their communities, but it really alienated those people and continue to alienate a lot of people down to this day who still are somewhat discriminated against if they have a vowel at the end of their last name. So I think we need to be investing in language learning, all the sorts of things that are necessary to integrate our communities and make us one community, not just who's here and who's new here.
Thank you, Drew. Now we have a 30-second follow-up from Gil. Sorry, Gil. I just checked you off. Okay, Gil.
Thank you, Howard. You know, it's not immigrants versus the existing community. I mean, because the existing community is made up of immigrants and their descendants. The real problems are income inequality, housing costs, and a system that lets a handful of wealthy people do extraordinarily well while working families struggle. Blaming immigrants doesn't fix a thing about that. So I support the core principles of the Safe Communities Act because public safety depends on trust. We need a stable workforce for our waterfront. We need a community where everyone feels safe to report an emergency. I mean, if a victim in Gloucester is afraid to call 911 because they think there's a deportation bus that's coming along with that, our entire community is less safe. We should let our local police focus on solving local crimes, not doing the federal government's job for them on our dime.
Thank you, Gil. Now we have a 30-second follow-up, starting with Christina. So, any comments by any of the candidates? Good. Question number 2. The topic is housing. The question will be presented by Gloucester High School student Henry Harrison. Henry?
What policies would you support to keep housing affordable so younger residents like myself can continue to live and work in our community?
We're going to start with Sarah.
Thank you. It's not only like yourself, it's like all of us here. This is one of the most urgent challenges facing Cape Ann. We need to work to keep housing affordable for all of us so we don't lose the heart of our community. I firmly believe that our 4 communities are stronger together than the sum of our parts, and housing is one place where collaboration can make a real difference. We should be coordinating and collaborating on infrastructure, water, sewer, transportation planning. We should be sharing best practices when projects succeed, like Harbor Light Homes' newest project in Rockport, or Habitat for Humanity's newest project at 47 Washington Street in Gloucester. So progress in one community benefits the whole district. We should be strengthening district partnerships with organizations like our housing trusts and Harbor Light Homes. And lastly, we need to be proactive as a district. I've seen firsthand as a local leader how state mandates like the MBTA 3A zoning can feel like one-size-fits-all solutions being pushed down our throats. If we shape housing solutions that reflect our character and capacity as a district, we maintain local control and get ahead of state mandates. As our state representative, I will bring our communities together and facilitate this collaboration. I believe we can make progress on housing and still preserve what makes Cape Ann special, but we need to do it together.
Thank you. Drew, your comments?
So housing is a complex issue, and of course there's a lot of levers that we need to pull when we're addressing how to get the cost of housing down, especially for people who need to stay on Cape Ann. The people who live in, who work here should be able to live here. The number one driver is supply. We've massively underbuilt in the past 30 years versus our population growth. And that's great if we want to not have babies, but we keep doing that. People move here. We need to make sure that we have housing for that. So we're not going to solve that issue here on Cape Ann alone. It's going to be a joint effort across the state. It's going to be a joint effort across the region. Every community needs to do their part. So that means building where it makes sense to build, especially around our T stations, and not where it doesn't make sense to build, where it's just going to add more traffic and more congestion. Specifically, we need to work on workforce housing, which means housing that our workers, our everyday workers, our teachers, our nurses, our everything, have the ability to live here. And that means focusing on affordable housing, building affordable housing. Sarah mentioned several great projects. There's another one going in right down the street from me at the former nursing home on Washington Street. I love it. I want to see more affordable housing. One other initiative that Rep. Ferranti and I were pursuing was job training housing, where you would live only if you're in an educational program or job training. That's the sort of innovative things I think we need to pursue as a Commonwealth.
Thank you, Drew. Gil?
Thank you, Howard. As a certified financial planner, what's a really important word when it comes to housing? Affordability. I mean, housing should be a human right, but we're not ready for that conversation yet. So let's start with affordability. Wall Street has made housing prices officially bonkers, is the word. Property tax bills are higher than some people paid for their entire homes, but they're the lucky ones. They have a home. I want us to think in terms of like a life cycle of home ownership, where seniors with a big house and a big backyard could build an accessible or maybe a tiny home to move next door, and then younger people could move into that larger home, and maybe they bring kids, or maybe they just bring roommates, but everybody gets to enjoy Cape Ann, right? So my favorite way to preserve the character of our neighborhoods is creating multiple units in those big, beautiful homes for downsizing opportunities. I support zoning that allows a mix of smaller units, accessory apartments, modest family housing buildings, always including gathering spaces for community, in places where the infrastructure can actually handle it. So where are we going to flush all these toilets and drive all these new cars or additional cars? We will comply to protect our grants, but we need capital to upgrade our pipes before density is built, and our electricity grid. So go to votegil.org to tell me what you think Cape Ann housing of the future looks like.
Thank you, Gil. Christina?
Young families, seniors, and working adults are being priced out of Cape Ann, and that's not theoretical, it's happening now. We need housing policy that supports both rentals and ownership, and right now that balance is off. I support 40Y, ADUs, and smaller ownership units that let communities grow at a scale that fits. And we should use Chapter 40B to encourage more for-purchase condominiums and starter homes, not just more for-profit apartment projects. We also need to limit corporate purchases of single-family homes. In a housing shortage, families should not be forced to compete with institutional investors for starter homes. I use 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control. Affordability means lowering cost, not just adding units on paper. Accountability means measuring results. If the policies produced most high-end rentals and little homeownership, we need to change course. Local control means communities should shape growth, not one-size-fits-all unfunded mandates from Beacon Hill. As a former planning board member, I opposed MBTA housing, and as your next state rep, I will fight to restore local control back to our communities. Let me be clear, affordability should never come at the expense of safety. Proposals to eliminate a second staircase may help developers cut costs, but public safety is not optional. Housing policy should expand opportunity, not price Cape Ann residents out of their hometowns.
Thank you. Now we have a 30-second follow-up from any candidate who would like to make any comments. Hearing none, we're moving to our third topic, taxes. Gloucester High School student Jude Worthley will present the question.
Do you support no state tax on tips, no state tax on overtime, and the audit of the state legislature?
Just let me clarify this. Massachusetts has adopted a lot of the federal rules. The tax on tips federally is first $25,000. It's phased out if your income level is above a certain number. The tax on overtime, if you make $20 an hour and you work overtime at time and a half, your rate's $30 an hour. Only incremental $10 is subject to no, on the federal rule, to no tax. Our first candidate we'll hear from is Drew.
So to get the easy one out of the way, I do support independent third-party audit of the legislature. With regard to eliminating tax on tips and overtime, I'm not sold on complicating the tax code somewhat arbitrarily. When we make exemptions to the tax code, we generally want it because we see extra value in doing so. For example, raising child tax credits gives a break to parents who do the hard work of raising our next generation. College tax credits encourage people to go further their education. For tips and overtime, ultimately these are both forms of income. So why are we exempting one type of income just because it happens to come from a certain place versus another type? Why is one worker who makes the same as another worker getting a benefit? So I think it really just complicates things. In terms of the tax on tips, it's going to make tipped work more desirable. I've heard some concerns from restaurant industry that it's going to make people not want to be managers because managers can't take tips. And with regard to overtime, I'm very concerned that it's just going to cause employers to say, hey, you want overtime, and overwork their workers because they've got an incentive to do so. The employee has an incentive to do so instead of hiring new folks. We need to make sure that we're taking all these factors into account when we're creating tax policy.
Thank you. Gil?
Thank you, Howard, for explaining that. I was going to get into that, but I'm glad you took that over. How many people here have ever volunteered for a municipal board? So you're familiar with the open meeting law. It's slow, it's hard, a little bureaucratic, but we follow that law and we get a bunch of things done for our towns. So in November, when the Massachusetts voters overwhelmingly passed question 1 by not allowing to make the audit, by not allowing the audit, they're defying a direct legal mandate from we the people, all of us. So from the Epstein files to self-enrichment, we've become numb to leaders who treat the truth like a security risk. I'm a financial planner. I don't find audits scary. I find them necessary. I'm running to wake up the system. Accountability is not a suggestion, it's the job. And Drew, very good points. I don't believe in picking winners and losers. We shouldn't offer a tax break to one profession while our teachers and first responders and everyone who's not making overtime or tips gets left behind. Let's raise the, model idea could be to raise the personal exemption for everyone. We could make the first $20,000 that you earn tax-free, and then regardless of your job title. That would be a common sense fairness for Cape Ann.
Thank you, Gil. Christina?
Thank you. Families are stretched right now. Groceries cost more, energy costs more, housing costs more. When I evaluate tax policy, I use 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control. Affordability means we stop penalizing work. That's why I support eliminating the state tax on tips and overtime. If someone works a second shift or relies on tips to support their family, the state shouldn't take a larger share of that extra effort. That's common sense. Accountability means if the government is going to collect revenue, it must be transparent about how it spends it. I'm gonna copy Gil. Quick show of hands. Who here supported the audit of the legislature? 72% of us. 72% of us did. So exactly, voters want transparency, and Beacon Hill voted no. That's why I joined Attorney John Deaton as a taxpayer co-signer in the legal effort to enforce the voter-approved audit. If you write the budget, you should be subject to an audit, period. And local control means communities deserve to see their tax dollars come back to them, not absorbed into unchecked growth on Beacon Hill. Massachusetts doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem.
Sarah?
Thank you. I absolutely 100% support an audit of the state legislature by the Mass Office of the State Auditor. I believe in transparency and accountability in government at all levels. Public trust, the trust of everyone here depends on it. The fact that 72% of Massachusetts voters approved the audit only strengthens that position. It should have already been completed. I'm actually going to stray from my notes here because I'm thinking a lot about what Gil suggested in terms of the tax on tips and overtime, and in terms of making it, equitable for everyone. Because I actually appreciated both of your comments about, why should we tax some people's income and not others? And I think that's totally valid, and I would like to look into that more. But I think what's important is that any tax changes have real budget impacts. And until we can, I can take a firm position, I need to know what the impacts are going to be, both income-wise and how it would affect funding, local schools, local aid, public safety. I obviously support targeted relief for working people, those who work in the service industry, but we have to look at the other end of it and where that affects us and, and how our community relies on those services. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have time for a 30-second follow-up by any candidate who'd like to speak. Yes, Christina?
I would like to clarify and point out that Mr. Tarr, specifically, I heard him say, and if you would like to correct it, an independent audit. And that's not the same as what 72% of us voted for, an audit by the auditor, Diana DiZoglio. So I would like to hear him clarify that, please.
Drew?
You did hear correctly. I'd like it to be an independent financial audit. My take from the auditor's statements is that she's wanted to do a performance audit on the legislature. It's something I do not think she has the constitutional authority to do. It is what the voters want, is a financial audit of the legislature. I absolutely believe that they should get that.
Any other comments? Yes, Sarah?
I was actually going to ask the same question of Drew, but I support the audit that the voters approved, which is an audit of the legislature. I don't think that it's just a financial audit. I think what happens after the audit is up to the legislature, and that's where the Constitution comes in and the separation of powers. But I believe that every resident of this state deserves the audit that we voted for.
Thank you. Any other comments? Question number 4. Gloucester High School student Henry Harrison will ask question number 4. The topic is food.
As Vice Chair of House Ways and Means, Representative Ferrante helped advance the fiscal year 26 budget that funded many food security investments. She specifically championed the Healthy Incentive Program and support for hunger relief organizations like the Open Door. What would you do to advocate for programs that make healthy food more affordable for Gloucester residents?
We'll start our response with Gil.
I have seen food security from the front line. My parents, before my father passed, received Meals on Wheels, and Meals on Wheels gave my mom back hours into the week of food prep from my dad, who was always asking for food in dementia land. And it gave him this feeling of independence because he could prepare his own food in the microwave. So I know organizations like the Open Door and Senior Care are critical to the health and dignity of Cape Ann. Representative Ferrante was a champion, but let's be honest, whoever wins this seat will be a freshman lawmaker, and none of us will step into a committee assignment on day one. So as your fiduciary, I don't need to tell you that food is infrastructure. Food is health. Food is vital. So like we could expand things like seed to school, much like a farm to table model. We should be using state procurement to buy underutilized goods right off the dock to supply our schools and foods. That would be a triple win because we'd have healthy protein for our kids, stable dock price for the fleet, and tax dollars that stay in our harbor. I'll treat food not as charity, but as a long-term investment in our district's solvency. So join me at votegil.org.
Thank you. Christina?
Oh, thanks. All right, so I want to clarify the question. Affordable for all of Cape Ann, right? So the question was Gloucester. No family on Cape Ann should struggle to put healthy food on the table. That's not a political, that's basic decency. And here, it isn't only about price, it's also about access. With too few grocery stores and the closing of Shaw's, parts of Cape Ann are becoming a food desert, especially for seniors and families without reliable transportation. We're fortunate to have strong partners like the Open Door, Action, Mobile Market, and Meals on Wheels. They do real work every day. My job is to make sure the state policy helps them, not buries them in red tape. To make healthy food affordable, we should maximize federal tools like SNAP and the Healthy Incentive Program. HIP puts money back onto EBT cards when families buy fruits and vegetables from approved vendors. That means we should be supporting local agriculture, food recovery programs, and expand year-round farmers markets and mobile markets, and improve public transportation so people can actually reach grocery stores, markets, and HIP vendors, because benefits only work if you can use them. And we should strengthen school meals with minimally processed, nutritious foods so kids can learn and thrive. That's how we improve food security on Cape Ann. Better access, smarter use of existing programs, and local solutions that deliver results.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. As Christina pointed out, food security affects all 4 of our communities on Cape Ann, even though I know the question was written towards Gloucester. The Open Door actually serves 11 communities, including all 4 in our district. As a local elected official for close to 20 years, I saw how important Representative Ferrante's leadership in strengthening food security programs was. Those investments ensured that every one of our residents had access to support to food resources before, during, and after the pandemic. That stable access made a massive difference in our community. During the pandemic, I will say, food and access to food was something that we did not have to worry about, thanks to the Open Door. As state representative, I would build on that work by protecting and strengthening funding for programs like HIP and SNAP that make healthy food more affordable. I would also continue to support and build partnerships with local farms and fisheries to keep fresh and local food accessible to working families. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew?
So anyone who knew Ann Margaret knew that food was a big part of not only her platform as a state representative, but her life. Often in the days when we were at the State House, I'd often get a call from Frances, Ann Margaret's mother, 11 o'clock in the morning saying, what does she want for dinner? So food is always on the mind, and it's especially on the mind in these times when I just met with the Open Door the other day, and they told me that they've had a 30% increase year over year in requests, which is just astronomical, and it's not something that seems to be going away. Ann Margaret was a consistent supporter of the Open Door and the Massachusetts Emergency Food Program, both of which I will continue to champion. She wrote and advocated for Office of Food Security and Resources. During the pandemic, we saw how fragile the local food system was. We think we should have a secretary-level official who's in charge of food security and resources to make sure that when we don't have those sort of chain breakdowns again. And I'm glad Gail brought up the getting things from our docks because we recently started a program to buy local seafood for the open door for distribution to their clients. And as you said, that not only gets protein into the hands of people who need it, it also gives a boost to our fishermen. Another thing that we did in the legislature that was a great use of the millionaire's tax money was universal school meals. If you're hungry at school, you can't learn. You can't learn, you can't further your education.
Thank you. We now have a 30-second follow-up for any candidate who would like to comment. Hearing none. Question number 5, and the topic is vaccines. The Gloucester High School student, Amos Telep, will present the question.
The vaccination policies are in flux. What is your opinion of vaccine mandates for schools and for jobs?
Thank you. We'll start with Christina.
Vaccines have played an important role in preventing serious disease, especially in school settings. But medical decisions are personal. Government cannot know every person's medical history, risk factors, or circumstances. Mandates are one of the strongest powers government can use, so they should be rare, narrowly tailored, and based on clear evidence. I support established childhood vaccination standards with clear medical and religious exemptions. There should be a reasonable process that isn't designed to punish people. Where I draw the line is broad mandates for employment, sweeping new requirements, or one-size-fits-all policies. Those should require legislative debate, transparent data, and real oversight, not emergency powers or bureaucratic edicts. Public health works best when people trust the system. Trust is built through transparency, honesty about risks and benefits, and respect for individual decision-making. We can protect community health and protect personal freedom. Those principles are not in conflict.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. I would, without question, listen to and trust the science and the recommendations of doctors and public health officials. I have my master's in business, not my doctorate in medicine. During the pandemic, I led Rockport's reopening committee. We worked closely with our Board of Health, which was made up of doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals. Every decision we made was grounded in their advice and their guidance. Leading a community through that experience reinforced something for me. Public health decisions must be driven by expertise, not politics. I also believe communication matters. Policies need to be transparent, clearly explained, and rooted in trust. That's where the responsibility of elected leaders comes in. Having personally led a community through one of the most challenging public health crises in modern history, I would approach any future decisions the same way, by listening to experts and acting responsibly to protect the health of all residents.
Thank you. Drew?
Recent outbreaks in measles and other formerly rare diseases have shown that we need smart vaccine policies. Smart vaccine policies over the past 100 so years have saved an amazing number of lives from polio, measles, mumps, rubella, tuberculosis, HPV, and other diseases. I believe vaccine mandates have a place in schools for encouraging that policy. We need herd immunity. Schools are often very close environments, and kids don't get to choose their exposure. As you know, when you go back to school and all of a sudden everyone's got something running up their arm and they're touching everyone else. My wife is a teacher. She knows it firsthand. Those policies should always include appropriate medical exemptions and be guided by public health expertise. For workplaces, I think mandates depend on the setting, especially where workers serve vulnerable populations like healthcare or elder care. At the end of the day, this is about protecting the whole community, especially people who can't be vaccinated, like cancer patients. There are a lot of places that Ann Margaret would not go as someone who is in active chemo every 2 weeks because she was concerned about what she might catch there. And people like transplant recipients who can't get these vaccines.
Thank you. Gil?
Vaccines definitely stir a lot of emotions. And as an unenrolled candidate, I don't take orders from any party platform. I just look at the data. And it was very interesting. So being a fiduciary also means protecting parental rights. So I oppose efforts like Bill H-2554. That would eliminate religious exemptions. So looking at the numbers, so our religious exemption rate is only 1.3%. So that's like 800 kindergartners statewide have an exemption from getting vaccines. Yet the legislature is ignoring this 4.1% gap. That's 2,800 kids whose records are simply just missing due to bad paperwork. So out of 3,600 kids that might be unvaccinated, we're spending our time forcing 800 to go against their will and 2,800 who need to get the form from their doctor's office to their school nurse so we can see what is really going on there. So can we just please focus on the issues that keep us healthy? Join me, votegil.org.
Thank you. We still have 30 seconds for any candidate who'd like to add additional follow-up comments. Go ahead.
The other thing that I fully support is the Vaccine Purchase Trust Fund. That currently manages over $110 million of bulk buy immunizations at a discount. It's smart, fiscally responsible use of state power. It keeps our community healthy and costs low. So I propose transparency over this coercion. Let's fix the filing cabinet and publish anonymous aggregate vaccination rates so families can assess their own risk about where they're going to go, like Anne Margaret did. We need a policy that respects medical freedom while keeping Cape Ann solvent and safe.
Thank you. Moving on to question number 6. The topic is energy. We'll hear from the high school student, Henry Harrison.
Over the past decade, Massachusetts residential natural gas prices have risen by about 93% on average, outpacing the national increase of 25%. Electricity prices in the state increased by roughly 65% during the same period, compared to 32% nationally. What specifically would you do to reverse these trends? Are you willing to stop net zero policies that have contributed to these increases?
Thank you. We'll begin our response with Sarah.
Thank you. In short answer, no. I believe energy affordability is a serious concern. We're all feeling the pressure of rising utility bills, and we have to address that directly. I support our long-term net zero goals because climate resilience is critical, especially for coastal communities like ours. But supporting net zero does not mean ignoring affordability. We need stronger oversight of utility companies and more transparency in how rates are set. If winter rate reductions are simply shifted into higher summer charges, like I believe we're seeing now, that's not real relief, that's just deferral. Ratepayers deserve predictability and accountability. This is not a choice between affordability and climate action. It's about implementing our energy transition in a way that is smart, transparent, and fair to ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew?
So I'm going to likewise disagree that net zero policies are what's driving energy prices. Energy is what it costs. It's a national market, especially for gas. One of the things we do have control over, though, is that part where you see on your bill it says energy charge and then distribution charge. There's a lot of fees on that distribution charge. One of them is Mass Save, which is a program that's done a lot of good. It's also had some mixed results. So I think that's something that we should be looking at, and as I understand, that's something that's being looked at in the bill that the House of Representatives is considering this week. The other part of that is in 2014, there was a bill passed that allowed utilities to accelerate building new infrastructure or rebuilding existing infrastructure because we're very underbuilt on our infrastructure because of how energy demand increased only a little bit for a long time, and all of a sudden we've got a very significant energy demand. Unfortunately, there weren't very good cost controls placed on that, so you have utilities building new pipes or replacing pipeline at extremely large dollar per mile figures and then immediately charging it back to you as a ratepayer. I think DPU needs to get those chargebacks under control, and I will advocate for that as your state representative.
Thank you. Gil?
Yesterday, I talked to my 87-year-old aunt, and she was in her second day of no electricity. With her gas stove, she walked through the snow with hot coffee to her 93-year-old neighbor with an electric stove. So I'm not here to tell you what stove to cook on. I'm here to make sure your energy is affordable and reliable. So rolling back efficiency is like refusing to insulate a drafty house because the insulation is too expensive. It locks you into higher bills. So I look at like Essex Tech as a model. They just installed geothermal system. They use creative ways to fund that, and they're permanently lowering their operating budget, which is great for us property taxpayers. So much of downtown Gloucester and the areas around the commuter rail are already kind of maxed out. And if we force 500 new all-electric apartments into a neighborhood where a substation is already at capacity, we're not building housing, we're building a blackout. And another thing, we've seen what happens when big corporations like Poland Springs move into a small town. They put a massive straw into the local aquifer, pump out millions of gallons of water, and for their profit. That's the same thing that's happening with AI data centers right now. They are taking electricity and power from the grid. We must sound that alarm. So my priority would be that we have to upgrade our substations and our transformers and use community power aggregation.
Thank you, Christina.
Massachusetts consistently ranks among the highest residential electricity rates in the nation. That's not political, that's federal data. Families are feeling this every month when they open their utility bills. When I evaluate energy policy, I apply 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control. Massachusetts families are being squeezed by rising gas prices, and ratepayers should not be carrying the cost of energy transition that is moving faster than affordability. I support responsible energy policy, but at a minimum, we need to extend the net zero 2030 timeline and reassess implementation based on real cost, real infrastructure, and real impact on families. If a technology is truly ready to deliver major savings, private investment would be lining up, but instead the public is being asked to absorb the cost, the risk, and the uncertainty. Ratepayers should not be venture capital for state mandates. We also need real oversight of delivery charges, program charges, utility rate structures, including when the rate of returns are too high and driving up the consumer cost. We cannot ask families to pay more at the meter while turning our farms, neighborhoods, and coastlines into battery energy storage systems, BESS sites. We need energy policy that works better at the meter, not just on Beacon Hill.
Thank you. We have time for 30-second follow-up comments by any member. Hearing none, we'll move to question number 7. The topic is healthcare. Gloucester High School student Jude Worthley will present the question.
Mass Health currently covers over 2 million residents. This includes more than 1 in 4 Massachusetts residents, nearly half of all children, and 7 out of every 10 nursing facility residents. Healthcare accounted for 47% of the governor's fiscal year budget in 2026. That's $11 billion for healthcare overall. What will you specifically do to reduce the healthcare cost?
Thank you. We'll start our response with Drew.
So if by reducing healthcare costs we mean cutting mass health, unfortunately that's already going to happen. It's going to happen to the tune of $3.5 billion because of federal cuts. Of course, cutting mass health isn't reducing healthcare costs. It's just shifting them away from the state budget onto the people who are least able to pay. That means that either they're going to be absorbing massive health care bills, or they're just not going to get care. They're not going to get preventative care. They're going to get emergency care at the highest cost that it can be. That just raises your rate as a taxpayer. It raises your rate as a premium payer for health care. an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think instead of focusing on this arbitrary, how are we going to reduce healthcare costs in this dollar abstract figure, we need to be looking at how are we reducing healthcare costs all around. And part of that is getting people who need healthcare the healthcare they need at an affordable rate. If you're not well off, that could mean free. If you're doing a little better, then that can mean a little bit more price. Not the price that some people are paying on the Health Connector these days, where you technically have availability of insurance, but you can't really afford it. That's not universal health care. For a state that's touting that we have so-called universal health care, we're not meeting it right now.
Thank you. Gil?
So as a fiduciary, I got to look at the drivers of cost and not just the total bill. First, we must stop this predatory financial engineering of our healthcare system. Mass Health covers 7 out of 10 nursing home residents. And since I studied this decades ago, it's still true. We've seen private equity firms buy up a nursing home, buy up a franchise of nursing homes, sell the real estate, and then lease it back at exorbitant rates right up until the facility collapses because it can't afford anything because the real estate cost is too much. So just like we saw with Stewart Healthcare, I'll demand ownership transparency, support the 2025 nursing home oversight law to ensure Wall Street doesn't loot Addison Gilbert or any of our infrastructure while the public cleans up the mess. And second, Amazon and Walmart report record profits. We've heard of these companies, right? I mean, they are among the top employers of mass health recipients in Massachusetts. When a company like Amazon pays so low, that wages so low that its workers in North Andover and Danvers have to rely on public health care, you are the one paying their employee benefits. That isn't the free market. That's socialism for billionaires.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks. Mass Health covers over 2 million residents, and it takes up a big share of the state budget. That means we have to manage it carefully. When I look at healthcare policy, I use 3 standards: affordability, accountability, and local control. Affordability means slowing cost growth so families and small businesses are not crushed by higher premiums and taxes. And where it makes sense, we should use a sliding scale, because people, not government, usually know what's best for them and how to manage their own money and healthcare choices. Accountability means stronger fraud, waste, and abuse protection, including yearly eligibility reviews, better audits, and more honest budgeting. If we don't enforce safeguards, these programs will not last. A state audit found nearly $85 million in mass health payments tied to out-of-state residents. Fraud, waste, and abuse drain money from the safety net programs and take help away from the people who truly need it. And if this is what we're finding now, imagine what the auditor will find when the legislature opens the books. Local control means supporting local providers and real competition, not more in a few big systems. Lowering healthcare costs does not mean cutting care. It means managing the system better so that it's there when people need it. We need to manage the system responsibility so the resources are protected for the most vulnerable.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. As we've heard from the other candidates, healthcare is a massive and complex issue that unfortunately I don't think we can solve in an hour-long forum. Massachusetts ranks near the top nationally for quality, but near the bottom for affordability. That tells us that we're delivering strong care, but too many families are struggling with the cost. Why aren't we learning from states that perform well on both quality and affordability, like Hawaii? Examine what policies they're using to help control costs, whether through stronger primary care, cost transparency, or better coordination. As with any issue, my approach with this would be to listen, learn, and collaborate. I would talk with providers, patients, employers, policy experts, and then we can work together to craft reforms that lower costs while protecting the access that's important. Reducing healthcare costs isn't about cutting care in our state. It's about delivering high-quality care more efficiently and sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have time for a 30-second comment from any of our candidates. Drew?
I'm just going to throw two more things out there. I'm glad Gil brought up what is essentially corporate welfare when we're talking about how these companies pay so low that they have to get SNAP, they have to get Mass Health or Medicaid in other states. That really should be going not to these giant record-breaking profit machines. They should be going to our local mom and pop businesses, the ones who really struggle with healthcare costs. If you talk to any small business people or know any small business people, you know what that does to their bottom line. And the other is we just need to also invest in the healthcare workforce. We need more doctors and nurses. Very happy that my son is planning on going to medical school.
Yes, Gil?
I just wanted to say that the cheapest way of taking care of someone, my mom and I did when my father was ill with dementia. We took care of him right up until the last week of his life when he had to leave the house for higher care. And I also wanted to give a little commercial for your local senior center. If you're over 60, you can talk to a Shine coordinator there, and they can help you navigate the tricky pitfalls of health insurance.
Thank you. That concludes our question and answer period. Now we're moving on to any member from the audience can ask the candidates any questions. The audience will be allotted no more than 60 seconds to ask their question. In response, the candidates will have 60 seconds to answer, followed by a rebuttal of up to 20 seconds. So Amos, you're going to bring the microphone around to anyone who wants to ask a question of our candidates.
Thank you. It was recently on the news that Eversource gross profits were 100% more than what they were last year. Do we know the profits of National Grid? And is there anything state representatives can do to help ease that cost?
Starting with Christina, your end.
Okay.
Response?
So the way I understand the rates are being structured is that there's a set profit that they're being allocated, and when we conserve and we are all told to hold back, they're still making the same amount of profit. So that's a contract that needs to be reassessed and looked at, and I would absolutely look into that and make sure that that's a reasonable number. Everyone deserves to make a profit, but it needs to be transparent and affordable for us.
Sarah, you'd like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with Christina. I think that it all needs to be looked at. I feel like we're all just kind of learning. It's one of those things that when rates are low, you just kind of pay your bill and kind of go about your business. But now that we're looking closely at our bills, for example, I've been doing a deeper dive into Mass Save and how the state controls what we pay for Mass Save. And it's really fascinating to see how much is controllable and how much regulators can adjust. But I think that's absolutely the responsibility of state legislators.
Drew?
I think this is one of the drawbacks that we have when we get into having public utilities run privately. If it's a public utility, I think ideally it should be run publicly, not for a profit. Now that's not the case here in Massachusetts, but I think the DPU and your representative should absolutely pursue that because it shouldn't be about making profit. It should be about delivering services to the residents.
Gil, your comments?
Right? Why are public utilities for profit? It's bonkers. So maybe to use that official Wall Street term that I said before, but we have to learn our lesson. We have to keep public things that are just vital for us to continue with our day-to-day. Those things must be in the public discourse, and like the internet should be a public utility.
Thank you. Any other comments, rebuttal? Hearing none. Amos, are there other questions?
I would like to ask what the candidates' thoughts are about the bill that regards medical aid in dying. This is something that requires nothing of anyone, but it does give terminally ill patients who meet very strict guidelines to elect to end their suffering and die in peace with a doctor's prescription, with open opportunities to anybody to not use this, or for doctors or physicians to practice or not participate also.
I'm going to use the same sequence I've used before. Sarah, you start first.
This one, I've actually been really struggling with this. I think from the minute that I decided to run, this is one of the issues that kind of keeps popping up, not in a main debate, but it was on the list of potential questions. I believe that when this was last on the ballot, I voted against it. But to be perfectly honest, I go back and forth. When I was in college, my dad passed away, and he was very sick for about 6 months, leaving my mom to care for. I was the oldest of 4, and it really got me thinking about medical aid in dying, and I was against it because, frankly, I couldn't imagine being my dad's age and wanting to end your life, like, and leave, and choosing to end your life and leave your wife and 4 kids. But I've been trying to kind of have an open mind and look at it like other ways, and I've learned a lot about it, and I continue to do so and will continue to do so. So my answer is I'm not sure, and I'm like totally honest about that, but it's something I'm open to learning more about.
Thank you. Drew?
So I've gotten a very large amount of correspondence on this bill, some from yourself, Susan, and the overwhelming majority of that has been in favor of the bill and in favor of medical aid in dying. So if the bill were brought to the floor, I could absolutely see myself voting for that. I've been in the presence of those who could have benefited from this, and it is definitely something that I would consider. If it's humane for us to do it to our animals when they're in terrible suffering, then why is it not humane to allow someone that choice?
Gil?
Amen. I support the End of Life Option Act. Yes, Bill 1486 for terminally ill neighbors with less than 6 months to live. I mean, so many technological and medical advancements have made us live longer than we ever thought we would live. Like when Ben Franklin died in his 80s, no one lived to the 80s. That's crazy. And now every one of us in here probably knows someone who's in their triple digits. And that's crazy. So when you get to some stage in life when that medical technology isn't working for you and your body is just not functioning, I watched it with my dad, and I prayed that he would one day take a deep breath, fall asleep, and not wake up, because it was not working. Houston had no control over that body, and absolutely, I would support that. And actually, that doesn't include patients with dementia. And I would even be willing to discuss patients with if I were to say now, writing in a will or something or a trust, if I get dementia, if this, if that, but the bill does not include something like that.
Thank you. Christina?
Thank you. I, like Sarah, am very torn on this, but it's more of a faith-based issue for me. I've had a lot of conversations. I'm Catholic, and so I've had a lot of conversations with my mother, my family, my grandmother. I remember having tea with her about this. And her response back to me was, God put this burden on you. And I go back to the conversation. Why, if we would do this to animals, why can't we do this for humans? So I am honestly deeply torn with this. But I do feel like people have a choice. If this is what people want, and there's several communities, several states, Vermont, there's many states that have figured out the language to make it appropriate. This is a legal issue, and I think people should have a legal choice to do it, so I do support it. But I struggle personally with it.
Thank you. We have time for 20-second rebuttals from anyone. Hearing none. Amos, other questions? I think we had some right here in front.
Thank you for the opportunity. More housing questions. So before the legislature, there are proposals for rent stabilization bills, as well as the possibility of a ballot issue. And also there's continued discussion about local ability to implement a transfer tax on high-end property sales. Where do you stand on both of those issues?
We'll lead off with Drew.
So I'm still in consideration phase about rent control, rent stabilization, and that's not because I'm specifically against it. It's more a matter of where exactly it comes down on the number that's used. In my research, 7% increase is where that sort of sweet spot is, so that it doesn't tamp down on development, which is we do need some development in order to stabilize housing prices for real, and not just saying, okay, we're Venezuela and now everything costs this much, because just labeling a price on something doesn't actually fix the underlying issue. And my other concern is I don't want us throwing that Band-Aid on there and then it all of a sudden saying we fixed housing prices, because that can't be what happens. In regards to the second part of your question, which was transfer tax. I'm not opposed to it. I'm worried about how it would affect our area, especially as prices continue to go up with houses. We don't want it hitting the wrong people. I think if it does happen, we would need some sort of exemption for it.
Gil?
About the transfer tax, the transfer tax usually is, I don't know the specific number, but it's usually somewhere in the area of like a $4 million home. And so this is not, there's not a concern when you are living with your mother or in your family in a triple decker or something. This is not a $5 million triple decker that is going to be, difficult to transfer from one generation to the next. So yes, I support transfer taxes on big, huge homes. If they're worth millions and millions of dollars, they're going on, the state can get a piece of that transfer. What was the other part? Rent. You're looking at that rent, the rent control bill that Maura Healey said she would not support. You know what I saw? That rent control continues from renter to renter. So if they lose an occupant and they get a new one in, they still are under rent control. They can't just go at market value. I think that is amazing for renters, and I would love it.
Christina?
Yeah, well, I would not support that. So this is a free enterprise, and property owners need to be able to take care of their properties. And if there's expenditures that need to happen and they can't take care of them, this is just not good policy. We need to not support rent control. The transfer tax, I honestly, I'd have to look into it a little bit more. From what I've heard, it sounds like I would be supportive of it.
Thank you. Rebuttal from him?
I didn't do that one.
Sorry, I took the wrong call.
Trying to keep track. It's a lot jumping around. We've got Gil yelling here. I'm like, okay. I love it, but it's a lot. So I don't think I'm in favor of rent control, because to me it seems like a short-term fix for a long-term issue. And the transfer tax, I don't believe that I'm in favor of the transfer tax, because it's another tax. Like, don't we have enough taxes on, like, at least before we do the audit, right? Back to the audit, and figure out like where we can cut before we're adding, taxes on transfer. It just seems to me to be like too much and grasping at straws.
Any rebuttal by any?
But
Gil?
the government is here to help the least among us. And I understand that it's so much easier to help the millionaires because they make it so obvious. You help a millionaire and then they donate to your campaign or whatever. But that's not what I'm here for. I am here because the millionaires, they figured out how to become millionaires. They're good. The government needs to help the people who haven't figured out how to have a savings account yet.
Any more questions from the audience? Amos? Over here? Oh, I think the fellow over the other side is first.
Thank you very much. I'm curious, what aspect of y'all's respective campaigns most closely resembles that of Anne Margaret Ferrante?
Here we'll start off by Gil.
I would say that the food security and the interest in food and making sure that people have available access to food, the healthy families program, that's not what it's called, but the healthy program, that we got millions of dollars here. I would have to say that is where I am most closely aligned with Anne Margaret.
Christina?
Thank you. I would say education and the fisheries. If I need to go into more detail, I have been exploring the Kennedy-Stolten Act, and I really do think that needs to be explored and brought back to that benefit needs to be brought back to the fishermen. But the education portion and the internships that people need to keep the fishermen going, the next generation, the technology programs that are going. So as a teacher in the Lynn Public Schools during COVID, I taught civics. So education and workforce development is very important, and we need to keep the trades going, especially in Cape Ann.
Thank you. Sarah?
I think it wouldn't actually be a policy. It wouldn't really be a policy or position, but more a personality trait. I've always admired, and I always thought that I worked well with Anne Margaret in terms of just the level to which we both cared about the community in like the most personal way. I know that Anne Margaret didn't have children, and I have children in the schools, so we differed in a sense in terms of our family. We all knew that she lived with her mother and cared very deeply and cared for her mother. And I always had a deep, deep respect for that. But I used to tell people that, she gave 150% of what she had to the community. And I admired that and aspired to be like that. So I think it's more that in that sense. I mean, obviously we align, we're both Democrats, and we worked well together. We didn't really differ on many policy issues, big picture. But I think in a lot of senses, I saw the same kind of caring, really personal care for the community and individuals.
Thank you. Drew?
I think one of my persistent challenges is not going to be where am I similar? It might be where I'm not similar. I mean, I worked with Anne Margaret for 9 years, and we shared a lot of values going into that relationship, and as a part of that relationship, instilled a lot of values in each other. My priorities in terms of legislation and budget is going to look a lot similar to hers. It's going to be about economic development, making sure we have well-paying jobs here on Cape Ann. It's about education. It's getting people into those well-paying jobs, whether that's our fine high schools and our fine middle schools and our fine elementary schools and pre-K. And finally, in our job training programs like GMGI and the trades. We have a great vocational school here. We have a great vocational school at Essex Tech, which my son is a member of, a student at. And education, economic development, and my third one, which I can't remember. I'm sorry.
We have time for one more question. Amos?
Thank you. Gloucester is America's oldest fishing port, 1623. Since 1994, it's been saddled with some very odd federal regulation. Don't allow the industry to innovate for now 32 years in a couple of days from now, March 1st. We've been trying to help through local fishermen signing on with us to push the ball forward. Why don't we have a modern fleet emerging? Why don't we have a vocation technical marine industrial high school and I4C2 for the next generation to see an ocean-centric future for us? So what I'm asking all four of you, where do you stand on a marine industrial ocean-centric future for our next generations. We've lost so much jobs and tax space because of those very strange federal errors. They did some really weird and embarrassing things. We need to fix it. We know how to fix it. So I'd like to see our panelists here to engage with that. Quite a few of them actually have read elements of our policy papers. Thank you very much.
We're going to start with, the question is, just the one question we're answering, right? One question. All right, Christina, we're starting with you.
So I have been talking to the community, and I look at New Bedford and I compare it to Gloucester. And maybe people don't want to be compared, but they're two major industrial fishing communities in our state. And New Bedford seems to be advancing, and Gloucester seems to be not advancing. So we need to explore and reimagine this marine industrial area. There are some studies, it's being studied over and over. And being on the planning board, it's interesting that you say, oh, let's study. I call it R2D2. I'm sorry. The numbers are confusing to me. I can't remember them. So that area has had several studies. And it seems that we need to have something that wants to go there, but we need to engage the community more, not have some ideas that are preset. And it needs to stay marine industrial and concentrate on the fishing community.
Thank you. Sarah?
Sure. I did receive your policy papers, as I told you when we met earlier this evening. I think I've made it through half of them. They're long, to be fair, it's very long. Okay, that's good to know. And I committed to you that I would finish reading them and then get back to you. But it's fascinating so far, and I look forward to finishing it. But I know as well that obviously there have been lots of proposals. I've had lots of residents come up to me about the lot, and I'm totally willing and open to looking into it. And I think it's the responsibility of our state representative to do that.
Thank you. Drew?
Thank you, Suzanne. I know you're very passionate about this issue, so thank you very much. I think when we look at what we're doing with our waterfronts, it needs to be very integrated. And we need to make sure that we're building for a future that's going to exist. We know how far back our fishing fleet has receded. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to the heydays. So when it comes to building our marine industrial, we need to make sure that we're building for what our future is going to hold, and absolutely training is part of that.
Thank you. Gil?
As I've been preparing for this, I've been looking into the requirement that Gloucester has to upgrade its sewage treatment center plant because of what we've been doing to the ocean, and that we've been hoping that dilution was the solution to our pollution, but really pollution is pollution no matter how diluted it is. So what I did find is that our renovation of the sewer treatment plant isn't going to include PFAS, isn't going to include removing PFAS from the discharge. And I contacted a Food and Water Watch organization, and they said that that would be one step, but really removing PFAS from the beginning of the supply chain, not the end and the sewer of the supply chain. But my focus would definitely be for the waterfront and for fishing would be making sure that the monitoring pollution and making sure that whoever was going out fishing was getting the healthiest fish they could get.
Thank you. That concludes our open questions from the audience. We're now going to go to closing comments and remarks by the candidates. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for their concluding remarks. I'm going to continue on with the sequence what we've established before. Sarah, you're going to start off.
Great. Thank you, and thank you again, everyone, for coming this evening. As you think about who should represent Cape Ann, I hope you'll consider experience, judgment, and the ability to work together. For 18 years, I've served as a local elected leader in the unique position of working directly alongside our state representatives. I've seen firsthand what works in that relationship, what doesn't, and where we can do better for our communities. I care so deeply about Cape Ann, and I believe that our best solutions come from listening, collaborating, and then steady leadership going forward. I would be truly honored to bring that approach to Beacon Hill and to serve Gloucester, Rockport, Manchester, and Essex. On March 3rd, please write in Sarah Jane Wilkinson and fill in the oval. You can learn more about me at www.wilkinson for Cape Ann. Thank you.
Thank you. Drew?
Thank you for everyone for coming tonight. As I mentioned, I'm Drew Tarr. I worked for 9 years with Rep. Ferranti at the State House, and I bring a lot of experience on Beacon Hill to you for your judgment as to whether or not I could be your next state representative. That experience is who to lobby, what we need to do to get our priorities done, who we talk to in our communities on how to get those priorities done. I am a product of a multi-generational household not because it was great and fantastic, though it was, but that's because it's what we needed to do to survive. My mother had to work 2 jobs. I had a single mother to put us in the position that we are in today. We managed to keep that multi-generational house going. That's something that's not happening for a lot of folks on Cape Ann. And that's why my priorities are economic development, education, housing affordability, and I hope you'll consider me as your state representative this coming Tuesday and on the 31st of March.
Thank you, Drew. Gil?
We see reports of 4,000 illegal detainments and the government overpaying for warehouses using your tax dollars to enrich well-connected property owners at 20% above market value, maybe 10, 20 million extra dollars. Whether it's the failure to release the Epstein files or refusal to audit our own Massachusetts legislature, we are being conditioned to accept that politicians are above the law. When the state ignores a voter mandate audit, they aren't just breaking a rule, they're testing your comfortness with lawlessness. So I'm running as an independent because I believe in the radical transparency and the dignity of the individual. We see my LGBTQ community leading the way in conversations about consent and empathy, values that should be part of the heart of our government, not discarded. So when you go to the ballot box on March 31st, remember that this isn't a test. This is real life. This is whether we hold the line for rule of law or continue to let it slide. Fill in the circle for Gilbert Frieden. Let's pass this test. VoteGil.org.
Thank you, Gil. Christina?
Thank you. Cape Ann has always understood something Beacon Hill too often forgets. Freedom, work, and community are protected, not managed from a distance. Over time, power has drifted away from Gloucester, Rockport, Manchester, and Essex, handed off to mandates and agencies that don't live here and don't feel the consequences. And when government expands in the name of good intentions, it rarely retreats on its own. I am running because I recognize when that line has been crossed. Before temporary policies become permanent controls, rights don't disappear overnight. They erode when no one pushes back. Cape Ann doesn't need another rubber stamp. It needs a representative who reads the fine print, challenges overreach, and defends affordability, accountability, and local control. If you want independent judgment and principled leadership, I respectfully ask for your vote.
We want to thank 1623 Studio for taping today's program. It will be aired soon on the 1623 YouTube channel. Remember to vote. The state representative primary is on March 3rd, coming up very soon, and the final election will be on March 31st. This concludes our program. Thank you all for coming here.